Welcome, everyone, to episode 250 of Fergo and the Freak. I'm your host, the Glorious League Freak, and we're going to have a really interesting conversation today. But first, we've got to talk about our sponsors, which is manscaped.com. If you go to manscaped.com and you put in the code NRL, you get 20% off and free shipping of any of their products. They've got a whole lot of stuff. Have a look at it. There's some good stuff that you could get for Christmas there. I recommend getting the Perfect Package 3.0. It's fantastic. You get a bit of everything. You get the Lawnmower 3.0. It is absolutely great. So go there, put in the code NRL, free shipping, 20% off. You also get a 30-day money-back guarantee because they're so confident in what they sell there. So check it out. You will not regret it. First of all, welcome, Sandy. You've been on before.
I have. How are you?
Good,
How are things down under?
They're smooth. And welcome your friend Jenni.
Hello.
How's it going?
Good. How are you?
Pretty good. Now, we're going to talk about the Toronto Wolfpack. We haven't talked since the Wolfpack were kicked out of Super League permanently after the vote between the clubs. Super League was involved. Obviously, the Rugby Football League got a vote as well, but they wanted the Toronto Wolfpack to stay in Super League. It was a devastating blow for the club in a year that has been basically their worst case scenario that you could think of, especially with COVID-19, all the borders getting shut down. You know, the whole premise is to have a transatlantic competition, and when you shut that down, there was always going to have to be almost a rescue package for the Toronto Wolfpack. And unfortunately, Super League threw in the towel immediately. It was really devastating for everybody that was behind the Wolfpack. The new owners of the Wolfpack stepped in with a pretty good offer going forward. They said that they were going to wipe clear the debts of the club. They were going to pay all the players. They were going to pay all of the administrative staff. But that wasn't good enough for Super League, and they said, no, thank you. We're going to forge ahead with competition that basically hasn't expanded. Well, it's expanded once since the late 70s, which is an absolute joke. So I'll go to you first, Sandy. What did you feel like when the decision come down, and how have you felt in the days since?
Where do I start? I'm really hurt because the people who voted never got a chance to see it. And the fears of what Toronto would bring was unfounded, because you can only judge on what you've experienced. And going on, I just felt that they were going on rumors or speculation that just wasn't right. You know, they didn't even ask anybody in Canada about the Wolfpack or anything. So I just felt like they just didn't want us. Some people didn't want us there for their own means. And I don't understand the sport enough to know what the hidden agenda is or why it would be so against. But the question I'm asking is, why are 5 of the clubs who are usually at the bottom of the league, why are they so powerful to vote against a club that could bring so much to the sport? I just can't understand. In a business situation, you go to the strong people in your organization to lead you because they're good at what they do. And you want whatever the good people have to go along the rest of the business. You don't ask the people who are not performing in the business to make decisions that can really affect the sport. And it's not about Toronto in a way. It's about all the decisions that have been happening this week that I really am scared for the sport. And Jenni knows I've been crying all week because I just do not understand.
Yeah, it really is. It felt like a decision that was almost bigger than the Toronto Wolfpack for me. It felt like it was a statement about the future of Super League and the reaching out of British Rugby League to be something more than it has been for many decades. And with the decision they come up with to get rid of Toronto, it just felt like it was an official decision to be the small northern sport that was, geographically isolated and that struggled to break through to the rest of the English market, let alone anywhere else, unfortunately. Jenni, what were your thoughts on the decision for Super League to kick out Toronto?
So here's the thing, in business, we have to make business decisions. And, do I think the proposal was flawless? No. Do I think the Super League's decision was based solely on the good of the sport? No. Let me put it in this context. In what other industry would you be asking your competitors to vote who's in and who's not? Imagine, for example, let's take, Usain Bolt, one of the best runners in the world. Now, let's say Olympics is coming up and he doesn't have the sponsorship money. And so the board needs to vote if he's going to run for the Olympics. And they invite every other runner. And the first guy says, oh, man, he's a bit too fast for me. No, I don't think I'm going to vote him in. I say no. And the second guy says, oh, last time he creamed me by, 2 minutes. No. So that's essentially what's happened here. You've got clubs sitting there going, ooh, Toronto look like they've got a good side this year. No, I'm kind of threatened by them, so I'm going to say no. Where else in business? It's like asking Burger King if it's okay to build a McDonald's. It just makes no sense why this vote happened, within the teams that were there. I mean, sure, give them a small percentage of the vote. Let them have a little bit of a say, but there needs to be some sort of committee that decides on this, like in any other organized sport. There's a committee that isn't made up of solely just the teams playing. It's almost like, well, give me our ball back. You can't play no more. And that's kind of how I felt the decision went. Am I upset? Yeah, I'm upset that Toronto didn't make it. I understand some of the reasonings behind it, but I don't understand the bullying, the one-sided, it's Toronto, so we're definitely voting no, especially from some clubs who are so poorly managed and in the past have mismanaged funds. I don't understand what knowledge they have to be able to make this vote.
And then the thing is that the 12th team that has to come in is going to be voted. There isn't even a voting process. So hold on a minute. So you made a vote in one way for the future of rugby league in a way, because it is a big step. And it was the biggest decision of the sport since it turned from a winter to a summer sport. But yet the 12th team that you're about to enter, who is going to represent the Super League, you're just going to do your own. I'm just going to do my own research and pick of the best deal. Like what?
I don't understand why I don't understand why there's no precedent or guidance on this. I mean, surely in an organization you have, some sort of charter or some sort of bylaws and rules that says if A happens, this is how we decide on B. But they're just like, I think we're going to go for 12 teams. Okay, you know what? We're going to do a bit of money saving as well because of COVID and things. So we're not even going to give them equal funding. I mean, how's that team going to be able to perform? You're going against, the Leeds Rhinos and things like that, and you're getting a portion of the funding. So where's the money going? Is this because, if we save money in the Super League, certain members of Super League get a bonus?
Well, I would like to know that question. Where is that extra portion of central funding that would normally go to the 12th club? Where did that end up? And my guess is, and I don't know this for a fact, but my guess is that was just divided amongst the rest of the clubs. The thing that gets me is that Super League has been a failing competition for a long, long time now. And there's so many indicators for British Rugby League that are pointing all in the wrong direction and have been for many, many years. And I don't understand why they would make the decision to just, steady as she goes and not back something new, back something bold. And that's what the Toronto Wolfpack always were. They were a big, bold step. It worked outrageously well right up until last year where, the Wolfpack were this entity that was almost like a fairy tale. They were ticking all the boxes. They were winning all the games they needed to win. They were attracting talent. They were attracting international recognition. And then you get to this year, and it has been a really extraordinary year with COVID-19. And there's been a lot of hurdles that everyone has had to overcome. And I don't understand why, teams in Super League and teams that represent British Rugby League, and I've always said Super League is the shop front for British Rugby League. I don't understand why they would get to a point where they'd say, you know what, this big, bold decision, this new direction, we're not going to take it. We're pretty happy with where we're going, because where they're going is just, they're going to end up being in a semi-professional competition within a decade if things continue the way that they're going. There's already talk that Sky is going to cut how much they give to Super League in the next TV deal. You've got to look for new revenue streams. You've got to look for something different. And Super League voted against something different. I find it really, really crazy that they did that.
It was so difficult yesterday. I was speaking to one of my friends in Canada who's a teacher. And since he's been watching the games, he's been taking and talking about the Wolfpack and making the Wolfpack assignments, in class. And a lot of the kids have gone to games, and they've really embraced, they've taken on rugby league within their own communities. And one of the kids yesterday said, when will I see Wolfpack play? Because they don't know what's been going on. Yeah. And he was in tears.
Yeah.
And it's so hard because so much has been done to actually get new people. These kids like Ethan, on Monday, he sees me crying and says, Mom, what's wrong? I really am. I don't know what's left. But so much was done that, how do you say to a child?
Yeah, the thing is, the Wolfpack were a bit different than any other team, right? They obviously had to come from ground zero, with no history. You've got rugby in the UK celebrating, over 100 years of steep history. So this is a team, brand new boys, but boys from, a lot of boys from the United Kingdom, who are now, first of all, I just want to say, without pay, because this deal didn't go through. So essentially, thank you to the other Super League clubs, because without you voting in favor, these boys are now 6 months without a pay, because Carlos did say he would pay for all their bills. So I hope you all have a Merry Christmas while these boys are struggling. Secondly, you've got this grassroots team here who's coming through, playing. They're talking to fans. They're talking to kids. They're doing their charity work. They're, making a difference in the community. They're going up to players at the end, little kids at the end. I've watched a few games where the little mascots go out, and actually the mascots from other teams were wanting to walk out with our players. Sandy and I, our children have been mascots a few times, and we've actually had to forego them walking out with Ashton Sims, walking out with SBW, walking out with your Gaza O'Briens, because the other kids from other teams are going, oh, can we walk out with Ashton Sims? Oh, can we walk out with Gaza? And that goes to show you that, first of all, rugby has no boundaries. It's a love of the sport, and it shouldn't just be about a team. But that shows you kind of the impact that the team has made in such a short time. And it has been a short time. And, we hear the same arguments back and forth. Well, they have no Canadian players. No. We've had one. We are growing. That we are a union country. We are growing league as a sport. It takes time. What do the away fans bring? Well, we bring donuts to start with, but we share them. We do share them. Yeah, but if you need to count on your away fans to fill your stadium and to pay your bills, then there's something wrong with your home fans. But to an average game, there's anywhere from 50 to 100 plus away fans. To some of the Super League games, there were more people in the stands coming to watch Toronto wearing a lead strip, wearing any other strip, because they wanted to see Toronto play. Not saying they wouldn't go to watch their own team, but they came out specifically to watch that. So the arguments are moot points. I think the problem we have is there's a saying in Scotland, "Aye you been," which means as it's been and as it always will be. And I think that is the problem. It's changing the great, and it stops with one man. One man has the power to change all this. And I guess I want to ask him, when are you going to pull up those big boy pants and make change? Because your league below you is failing. The whole Super League is failing, and it is down to one person.
Yeah, and I think he needed to show some leadership and say, look, I've said this before, something different needs to be done here. We can't continue down the same road, because if we do, we're in a lot of strife. They've got to give something to Sky, which is interesting to Sky. And it's not only that. I mean, if Super League wants to grow, it needs to look for its own revenue streams to build upon. And that's something that Toronto gave it. Gave it access to a city of over 6 million people in North America. And that is something that, the NRL would kill for something like that. The NRL, unfortunately, couldn't do it. Toronto's too far away from Australia. Yeah. And, for Super League to have that sort of foot in the door, they would have had the biggest potential catchment area of any other Super League club. And that is something that I can't believe that Super League thinks it's in the position to walk away from it. It's absolutely crazy to me. And especially when everything was set up for it to work and we hit COVID, and of course there's going to be problems, but you don't throw in the towel immediately as soon as there are problems. It's a ridiculous decision, and one that, even if they had to come out and they had to said, look, we're gonna allow the Toronto Wolfpack to sit out next season but come back in 2022, because we understand there's so many issues in terms of international travel and things like that. Allow the Wolfpack to build, to grow, and to be ready to come back in a year's time. But they just said, no, we're not going down that road. And I would like to know what the plan is now for Super League, because it seems like they've been making it up a lot as they go this year, and that's fair enough because it's been a really strange year. But they must have something pretty bloody impressive lined up for the next, year and a half or so before that TV deal gets signed, because, they're in a really bad position in terms of where the league sits and what its future is. They're selling towns to major corporations and trying to tell them that, this is the future. It's small towns in Northern England for the most part, but it's definitely not a city of 6 million people in North America. It makes no sense to me.
I have two questions or comments, and I just need him to give me an answer, because fans, need closure, whether you are a Wolfpack fan or a Rugby League fan. It's the one, he made two comments that really just, I honestly, I just can't understand how he even said it. Was, I don't believe there's any, obviously I'm kind of trying to summarize it, something like there's not enough interest or something in North America, but there's more potential to grow the sport of rugby league in France and outside of the heartlands in the UK. Now, Super League have been around for 20 years or something like that, Jenny. Mm-hmm, what are they waiting for? That's my first question. What are you waiting for? If this is a genuine statement, honestly, it's not about Toronto at the moment, but he made a statement that said you can grow the sport of rugby league in France and in the UK outside of the M62. You have been around for 20 years. I'm waiting. What are you waiting for? And then the other comment he made is that the city of Toronto is oversaturated with sports. So what's Manchester? What's London? Yeah. Just those two alone. So it just, Oh God, I can't.
The problem is, the problem is, Sandy, is when you're making up BS, you have to try to grasp at straws, and that's essentially what's happened here. We don't have facts. There's no facts in anything. This is coming down to, we need to find some good excuses that we hope the public will get behind. And the thing about Super League and the thing about the teams in the Super League is you start a little spark and you'll end up with a whole wild bushfire. And so they'll leak little things to the press. Toronto had payment problems. They're bringing nothing to the sport, are they? And it's Chinese whispers. It's going around, and it's like, oh yeah, they're definitely not bringing and did you hear? And did you hear? There's no facts behind anything. And, it's important to note that the Super League were asked by many and many of journalists to make a comment or a quote, and they refused. Mm-hmm. They point blank refused to comment. Now, if you fully believed in and you had full, confidence in what you have decided, then why wouldn't you release an official statement? Why wouldn't you come out and say, these are the reasons, here's the presentation, this is why we felt, there was none of that. Toronto is happily, you've seen the letter yesterday leaked about from Carlos to the Super League outlining, what he was asked. Where's the statement from the Super League? Where's the statement from those 8 clubs on why they said no? I want an answer. I mean, I don't think it's too hard if you were bold enough to vote no. And some of those clubs, may I add, have mismanaged funds. I don't like to bring up the past, but
Jenny, they're bringing up our past. They're bringing up our past. If you've got some
clubs that we're having financial problems from within, and people were profiting from within and not giving it to the club, I'm not sure how you can say anything about another club's finances. But where's your statement? We had statements from Leeds giving us their support. We had statements from the clubs that were supporting us, but it seems those that have said no or just saying no and running. I think you owe the public and you owe the people who have paid tickets on your gate an answer.
Because there's a lot of fans from these clubs who are appalled by the decision. Well, there's a lot of support, more than people, I couldn't believe when that letter from Carlo got published, the comments were, look at his grammar. I can see, really? Are you absolutely making judgment on Toronto based on someone's grammar?
That was the other thing. He did the meeting from the back of his car. I mean, yes, he's he made his presentation and then was asked to come back. He would have had things planned. It was short notice meeting. I mean, I don't understand this report that they're saying that they did against Toronto. Why wasn't this done from the get-go? I mean, I think over the coming weeks, people are going to get angry and they're going to start asking the questions. And the fans have a right to be angry, not just of Toronto, but of Super League. Where's this money, Super League? Why are teams struggling? And I don't just mean Toronto. I'm talking about some of the bigger teams. There was a grant given to the Super League for COVID. 17 million. Where's that money to help out these clubs? Where's this money to help out the players of Toronto who haven't been paid for 6 months? Why? We're talking about be positive. We're talking about mental health. We're talking about player welfare. The Super League were like, well, sorry, you're not a full member of the RFL because we weren't allowed to be, may I add. So we're just going to leave you high and dry because you're not a member of the RFL. We have no obligation to assist you. But then they'll be the first ones to post if one of these boys does anything tragic. They'll be they're the first one to sit there and be, oh, poor Rob Burrows, MND. And I get that. They got fully behind that because, Leeds. But then you've got boys struggling to pay their bills. You've got boys who are stranded who couldn't get back home to Australia. You had fans trying to do GoFundMes, and the RFL's response is, well, you're not fully members, so we're not under any obligation to help you.
Yeah, which is completely outrageous.
They're down, right?
Yeah, and that's been an outrageous aspect of Super League for a long, long time now, in that players not getting paid is a regular occurrence over there. In the NRL, all players' salaries are guaranteed by the NRL itself. So if tomorrow and look, they get so much money from TV deals, it wouldn't happen. But say tomorrow the Manly Sea Eagles fall over, Manly players, all of their salaries are covered by the NRL itself. And this attitude that's in Super League where, well, that's not our problem. I'm sorry, you've got to deal with that. I don't understand it. And I tell you what, and I said this from the very, very early days, as soon as the Toronto players were left high and dry like that and they weren't getting paid, and I mean, it wasn't just that they weren't getting paid, they were getting eviction notices from places that were supposed to be paid by the club that they weren't getting paid and all sorts of things like that. I thought that the rest of Super League players should have gone on strike because it's not just about one club. It's about the greater game.
Take a knee. Exactly.
Yeah. There was a lot of players suffering, not even just from the Wolfpack. There's a lot of players, and I'm not going to mention names, Jenni might be there, who've taken really bad situations with what's been going on, but that's why we started the petition. It wasn't about we want Toronto back. It's a true fear of where is the sport going? Because what's happened in the past week, you have an individual on 600,000 who is meant to be guiding you and your organization and your sport to good things. And all I've seen is chaos. Even people who've been following the sport for 50 years says it's just chaos. And people like my son and Jenni's and these kids in Toronto who absolutely loves the rugby league, who got into the sports, there might not be one in the area to play, to aspire them.
Yeah.
The thing is, where's the transparency? Why are clubs being asking their fans for support with paying for COVID tests when we got money from the government? Why are fans being asked not to get refunds on their season tickets because the clubs, and I'm not just talking Super League now, I'm going to talk all of Rugby League in the UK, teams are fearing of going bust. I don't understand where the money is. There's no transparency. There's no accountability. You've got a man sitting at the top of his perch, and basically he could say tomorrow, I want 15 teams in, and who's going to argue against him? Where's the talk back? In no other sport would this happen. You would get, look at the NFL players. They're taking knees for political reasons, and you've got teams over here, many of which are, you've got Gaz O'Brien, players like this who play for other Super League teams and other rugby league teams who are saying, listen, I've not been paid for 6 months. And every other team is just turning their back on these guys as if they don't even know them. And I also think, the teams that have signed some of our players, who also have voted no after offering contracts to said players, but that's another story. Man up and help these players out. Help their, it does stop with David Argyle. I get that. I get it. But this isn't the first time this has happened.
Jenni. There was a solution.
There was a solution, and they said no. They said no, and there's no reason for them saying no. When you've got some of the most financially sound clubs in all of Super League, all of Rugby League voting yes, it makes me wonder why the teams who voted no, some of which are in dire financial trouble, Hull, and you've got other teams who are saying no just because they don't like Toronto and they feel that that's what their fans wanted to hear. And it's selfish. It's selfish, and you basically took the money out of the mouths of those who needed it, and you're not providing any other solution. I'm not seeing any of these teams saying, you know what, we got extra money because Toronto didn't take central funding and they didn't take their winnings. Let's all pool together and help these families out.
Well, how about
nobody's done that?
When the decision come down and the new owners of the Wolfpack, the potential new owners, said, look, we're going to cover all the salaries. And Super League comes out and they says, no, that's fine. My first thought was, if I'm Sonny Bill Williams and I just lost $5 million on that decision, I would be outraged. And look, Sonny Bill, he'll be fine. There are plenty of other players who, the money that they've lost from the Toronto decision it's really, really important to them. Like, they actually need it. It's not like they've got a big nest egg or they've had this career where they've made millions of dollars over the course of their career. And so just on that alone, I was very, very surprised.
This is the problem. This is the problem. The fans don't see past that. You've got fans of the Super League who are saying, yeah, but Sonny Bill gets paid how much? Maybe you shouldn't have bought him. Sonny Bill gets paid how much? He doesn't need the money, and maybe players should manage their money better, and maybe this and maybe that. And that is the problem. And you know what? It doesn't matter if Sonny Bill gets paid $1 million or 50 million. I mean, it's your money, right? It's your money, and you earned it, and you have the right to it. And yeah, he may not need as much help as maybe some of the other players, but you've got some players who actually signed with other clubs for less than working full time at McDonald's because they needed the money.
And that's the thing.
That's the thing.
And well, like we've seen this year, like all of a sudden Super League, and they did it kind of quietly, where they got rid of the minimum salary. And so, like, that's your first step towards becoming a semi-professional competition, where you've now got professional players that can potentially run out there against guys who they've got a job during the week. They're not professional rugby league players by the definition that they should be. And this is just a long road that Super League has been walking down, and that's what I don't understand about it. There's been so many times where Super League has had an opportunity to try and change where they're going, and this is just the latest. But there's something about this decision for me that it really felt like a hammer blow to what Super League was supposed to be. I mean, it was supposed to be the European Super League. It was supposed to be teams in France, and there was supposed to be London was supposed to be in there. We was supposed to have a team up near Newcastle. It was supposed to grow, and it didn't. It just didn't. And here's a team in Toronto, and they did it, standing on their own 2 feet right up until last year, until COVID hit. And, Super League has just turned their back on it. Now, one of the things I want to touch on, there was something in this report about the social media engagement of the Toronto Wolfpack, which
we don't do any. We don't do any, by the way, apparently. Yeah. We don't do any.
Yeah. Like, and like, I started following the Toronto Wolfpack pretty early on, and was lucky enough to see the social engagement just explode. I mean, even now, it's fantastic even today. Tell us a little bit about what they talked about in terms of the social media engagement with the Wolfpack.
Jenni, you can do it because it angered me. All
right. So I work in social media. I handle, a lot of professional social media accounts for both sports and government. And one of the things that they pointed out in this report, and there is a whole section on this report about social media. They say that we've gained reasonable social media in a small amount of time. However, basically they're saying when we stepped up to Super League, we weren't playing with the big boys. We didn't have enough. Toronto Wolfpack had the lowest video views and engagements among compared clubs. So being in social media, I decided to have a little look-see.
Are you going to bring facts into this?
Come on, Jenni, don't do that.
And I'm not just going to say at the end of my sentence facts, which seems to be the biggest thing on Twitter today, like Toronto Wolfpack, we're never a sustainable business, facts. And that apparently makes it true. I'm actually going to bring numbers.
Okay.
Now, 13 hours ago, the Toronto Wolfpack posted a video. In 13 hours, 482 people retweeted that one video. I'm just going to go off Twitter. 482 people. Now, that's a lot of people in 13 hours, given the time zone difference between here and Toronto. It had over 1,500 engagements just on the Toronto page. This doesn't include when people share it or anything like that. This is just purely on the Toronto page. Now, I compared that to the likes of Leeds Rhinos, to the likes of Featherstone, to the likes of Hull, and other clubs. Now, Leeds Rhinos posted a video with Rob Burrows in it. They posted a video, and I decided to go back hour for hour. 20 hours ago, Leeds Rhinos posted about Kevin Sunfield and how he's doing a challenge to raise funds for Rob Burrow, who is a big name, right?
Yeah.
Big name, big in the press at the moment. In 20 hours, that had 20 comments, 110 retweets, and 500 likes. Let me remind you again of the Toronto Wolfpack number. I mean, these aren't things I can make up. Anybody can log on to social media and check this right now.
Yeah.
1,563 likes, 482 retweets in 13 hours for a club that apparently nobody likes, had no future, had nothing. The Toronto Wolfpack have constantly tweeted. They tweet all their games. They put on social media. They've got a fairly good social media team.
Yeah.
And when they compared the performance, they chose 3 clubs. Now, let me tell you the clubs they decided to compare them against: Hull KR, the Red Devils, and Wakefield Trinity.
Okay.
So we're comparing apples with grapefruits.
Yeah.
Now, a lot of these clubs have been steeped in Super League and in Rugby League for a long time. Now, I decided to go to some of these places, and for example, Hull KR, they made a post 13 hours55 It had 7 retweets and 28 likes, but apparently we're not as good as them. Now, they've got 55,000 followers, Hull KR, 59,000 followers. And that is, they've been around for years now. Toronto has 36.1 on Twitter. So we are, for a new club, we're getting up there. We're making, progress. And just the fact that you can actually see what's trending, and you put in, the likes of Toronto, and you can see who's talking. But what I found very interesting is over the last 72 hours, those clubs that have said no have all lost over 1% of their followers.
Oh, really?
1% of their followers, and including Super League. People are boycotting this. And it's not just Toronto fans. I've got pages on our Facebook page and things like that of people saying, I'm disgusted at my club's response. Disgusted. So I don't know what more they want from us. I don't know what do they want blood? Do they want us to be, the next Addison Rae of social media? Do you know what I mean? Do they want us to have 6 million followers?
Jenni,
it isn't going to happen.
Remember, the fact that we had teams like the Maple Leafs, the Raptors, the Jays supporting us, who gives a shit? I'm sorry. Of course, no one wants 3 major sports teams with over 1 million followers who've retweeted Toronto stuff in the past. Who the hell wants that stuff? Nobody.
And I'm gonna give another quote here, because this is how deluded they are, bearing in mind our Raptors and other teams. The social media area in a Canadian-based team does not offer any material benefit to Super League over a Heartland team operating in a much smaller home market. Again, the social media area in a Canadian-based team does not offer any material benefit to Super League over a Heartland's team operating in a much smaller home market. So we do have a big population. Shall we look at London Broncos, who have the same population, if not greater than Toronto? Should we look at, some of these other teams? I mean, did any of them sign Sonny Bill Williams? Did any of them bring that? We got loads of Australian people. The London Broncos, who were in the Super League, although relegated, 25,000 followers. So around the same comparison, a little bit less than Toronto. So I don't understand. On one hand, they're saying social media performance isn't directly related to Super League income. And then the next hand, they're saying, yeah, but you're comparing and it's worse.
Yeah, but you've got to look at Maple Leafs' point of view, right? I mean, getting retweeted by the Raptors and the Maple Leafs and stuff, that just shows how flooded the market is in Toronto. And of course, you want to have the smaller market, don't you? You don't want to go for the bigger market. That would be ridiculous.
Of course you don't. Oh, who wants to grow the sport? God forbid. Yeah. My God.
I like the home. I like the way that they called it the smaller market at home. And that's what it comes down to with the mindset. I've said this for years and years, is that Rugby League Heartland is anywhere rugby league is played. It doesn't matter if it's and like if you're in Northern England and you're a rugby league fan, you are no more important than the dude in Italy that follows this weird sport that none of his friends follow, and he watches it on his computer and he watches it from all over the world. He is just as important as you are. That's Rugby League Heartland just as much as Wakefield or Hull or anywhere like that. But the attitude is that, home. And when they say home, they mean Northern England. And they mean only a small part of Northern England as well.
Right. I'm going to say something. I every time I say it, I always get upset, and Jenny knows, but it really hurts. So on one of his comments, he basically just dissed the new fan base. He made it as if we didn't count, like we're irrelevant. The way he wrote it was like, oh yeah, they've got all these people, but who gives a fuck? Yeah. They're new fans. As if just because we're new fans means we shouldn't be taken into consideration for the whole growth of the sport, because they've got fans who've been around for 50 years. The fact that he even used words that just insulted our fan base is not fair.
No. It's grasping at straws. It's grasping at straws, Sandy.
When we were in Leeds for the season opener, Robert Elston saw us. The look on his face was like, oh my God, they've got fans? He gave us a side look. And I will never, ever forget that. And that's why I made sure we were fucking loud that day. I was like, if you're going to look at me and my friends that way, just we were loud, weren't we, Jenny?
We were. And what really gets me is this report that they're going on about, and about the social media, about the fans. In small print, it says, we were unable to get the figures from the Canadian market. Okay. So you're telling me that you looked at the Super League clubs in the United Kingdom and our posts about the Super League clubs in the United Kingdom, but where we're home, that's like saying Catalan Dragons are not very popular in the United Kingdom. They're not very popular in the Super League. Unfortunately, we're unable to gather the figures from France at this present time. Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's bizarre. That's like saying, Manchester United or any club. We didn't look at Manchester to see how they were talking about it. We just looked at London, how they felt about Manchester. And another interesting point is that, they speak about Nielsen coverage and about the TV deal that they totally ripped away from Toronto. They said that when they removed the articles talking about the withdrawal from the 2020 season, now bear in mind, when we withdrew from the 2020 season, we only had played not even a quarter of the season. They said that Toronto Wolfpack only ranked second equal out of the four clubs, behind the Red Devils and tied with Wakefield Trinity, in relation to the percentage of media articles that each club appeared in that referenced Super League. And it said, only second. However, it did note that the value of the Toronto Wolfpack articles was the highest of the four clubs. So 1 second you're saying we mean shit on social media, and then you're saying, well, when we actually look at when you mentioned Super League, you're second, and actually you were the highest, but we're not going to talk about that because I need to find a reason to hate you. So let's talk about something else. Let's talk about the fact that, you didn't make that much money. Name me one club that has made that much money for Super League. Please, I'm begging you, if somebody out there can show me a club that has generated funds for the Super League off their own back, because I'm telling you now, I'd love to see the money we've generated bringing SBW in. I'd love to see those figures and the Sky figures, and how many people down in Australia subscribe so that they could watch SBW. I'd love to see those figures, but unfortunately, in this report, those figures are not available.
One of the interesting things for me is that over here in Australia, for many years there was a push to get rid of the New Zealand Warriors. And the NRL always resisted. And it was a very easy argument. And it was a very insular argument. What's a New Zealand team doing in the Australian competition? It's our competition, and I always thought it was ridiculous, like absolutely ridiculous. And eventually it got to a point where the New Zealand Warriors and the television deal that they generated in New Zealand was worth way more than the club grant that they got from the NRL. So to axe the New Zealand Warriors would actually have lost the NRL money. And that should have been the goal for Super League with the Toronto Wolfpack. It should have been about making a new television market in a massive city. I mean, 6.1 million people, that's bigger than Sydney. And by the way, way less teams than Sydney has. Talking about a saturated market. And it was a chance to build a new television market for the game. And to walk away from that is ridiculous.
Right.
The other thing that really upsets me, like really, really does, is you look at that game day experience that they had there in Toronto and, packed stands of Canadians. It wasn't like, it was actual Canadians that were turning up to watch rugby league and they were loving it. And they were saying,
but they never paid to get in there. They were all given free tickets, right?
Yeah.
I mean, half of them were cardboard.
I paid for my tickets.
Well, half of them were cardboard anyway. I mean, I'm glad you thought they were real Canadians because it goes to show that our marketing team does a brilliant job picking out cardboard.
We don't have any details from the Canadian market. I'm sorry, we can't talk about that.
So sorry. You talked about getting the experience. So I've got an actual quote from Robert Elston himself. In 2019. Do you remember when they at last minute decided, well, we don't even know if Toronto will be allowed in if they even win the £1 million game? They were doing that little research at the end of the season. Anyway, this is his findings. I can thoroughly recommend a Wolfpack experience, a great welcome, a special match day, and an amazing city. I believe all fans would enjoy a trip to Toronto. Welcome Toronto Wolfpack to Super League. This was last year, around August, I think, or September. All of a sudden, we do nothing for the sports or Super League. Nothing. How the hell do you go from, oh my God, it's amazing, I've been here, I can see it, to nothing in 12 months? Like, apart from the pandemic, which, sorry, I'm not allowed to say, apart from something that's fucked up the world.
And it's been devastating you look at what the New Zealand Warriors had to do. And New Zealand is a couple of hours flight from Sydney. And, there was talk they might not be part of the NRL this year. And the NRL bent over backwards to make sure that they did everything they could to keep the Warriors going. You had other clubs lending them players. There was the NRL knew the importance of the Warriors, and they knew that they had to go above and beyond for that team. And Super League just hasn't done that, and it's incredible to me that they've seen all of that investment and waited for the Wolfpack to get to Super League. Like, that was everyone's goal, and then they get there, and the pandemic hits, and it's terrible. But they didn't bend over backwards to make sure that all of that time and investment and the opportunity wasn't lost. And to me, it's devastating for the sport in Great Britain and in the rest of the world, because the Wolfpack, and I've said this, was the most important team in rugby league. I still believe it is. At one point it was the Brisbane Broncos, and then it was the Auckland Warriors who turned into the New Zealand Warriors. Then it was the Melbourne Storm. Now it's the Wolfpack. And to lose what was built so quickly in Toronto with the Wolfpack, it's devastating for the entire sport.
And I agree. And I think there's a few important things to bring up that I don't think many people realize. So one, furlough. Furlough was given to other clubs who many clubs used to pay their players. Without furlough, we would have seen many clubs cripple this year. Now, that was not an option. The Canadian government decided when they were giving out support that they simply couldn't afford to give out support to businesses that they felt were maybe luxury, and so no sports teams in Canada received any financial support.
Yeah.
That's one thing to note.
That's why Canadian football had to close the whole season, and that's not happened for Ghana because they just couldn't afford it, so they just canceled the whole season. So,
and the second thing to note is that the boys, because of tax reasons and things like that, were not able to access, and because the Wolfpack was a Canadian employer, was not able to access the furlough scheme in this country. And that's a very important thing to and I know the buck stops with David Argyle, and I want to reiterate, nobody's excusing what has happened with him, but the man has a business in Australia. It's a mining business, which was heavily impacted by COVID. That business suffered as well, and he needed to take care of his players down there. He tried to sell assets to gain money, and I think we are also thinking that this COVID only happened when lockdown started. COVID was affecting businesses well before lockdown started. Lockdown was a result of COVID affecting so many businesses. He couldn't sell assets to get the money, and he to this day is trying to sell assets, but in the middle of a global pandemic, people are not buying shares, people are not taking risks or lending money, mortgages were put on hold. Like, this affected, nobody in my lifetime, my parents' lifetime, my grandparents' lifetime has lived through a global pandemic. And people are saying, well, Toronto's just using it as an excuse. You owed money before. Okay, there was a few bills that there was owed money. I can't say whether they were legitimate or not, but what I will say is they were peanuts compared to the huge bag of nuts we're talking about now. We're talking about huge amounts that just couldn't get paid. And what do you do in those situations? It could have happened to any Super League club, but unfortunately the government gave money for those clubs.
But ask yourself the question. So last week there was uproar about the idea of finishing the season abruptly because they were concerned that they weren't going to be able to do all the TV games, et cetera, et cetera. That was last week. All of a sudden, in the afternoon on Monday, Boris Johnson says we're extending the furlough scheme in November. All of a sudden, the teams who were happy to complain about not finishing the season because we need to make sure that we do what we have to do to get our money from Sky, all of a sudden we're championing, let's finish the season now. I'm just saying.
Yeah.
Well,
I'm just saying.
Exactly. And, we did have a breakout in the league and things, but I do know that the likes of the NRL and stuff made their players take certain precautions so that the infection rate was a lot lower. Maybe we should have done that over here. But I think in the grand scheme of all of this, because, many people are going to listen to this and they're going to say, here's two bitter fans about Canada. Ha ha ha. Maybe your club should have done X, Y, Z. So, am I annoyed about Canada? Yes. Am I upset the Toronto Wolfpack aren't playing next year? Yes. Do I understand some of the reasons? I do. What I'm asking for is a few things. I want people who support Rugby League, who support the Super League, to ask yourself a few questions. It could be your team next. Look at the likes of Featherstone. And I will talk exactly to the Featherstone fans. Your team could be one of the teams chosen as the 12th team. You're going to get a portion of the funding. You may or may not get through. And if your face don't fit, despite how you played, and they did lose against Toronto, but in my opinion, they earned that position as the second best team. If we're looking at the competition as the two best teams end up in the end, but your face doesn't fit. So you might not get to Super League. I'm asking you guys to ask these hard questions. Where is the governance? Where is the accountability? Where is the transparency on the selection, on the decisions? Because we as the fans, we fund this league. Without us fans, there would not be the money. There would not be the sponsors. There would not be the amount of hype around Super League. So we need to pool together and actually, set aside whether you like the Wolfpack or not. But this should show you that the transparency, I believe as fans, you all deserve answers. You all deserve answers why your club voted a certain way. If you believe strongly against the Wolfpack and you're part of Leeds, you deserve to know why Leeds voted for the Wolfpack. I feel that transparency is key and governance is key. And we don't have any of that in Super League. There is no one to question the big dog. And
It's
there's
like,
no one to watch him.
It's like, for example, if you look at the health system, you've got a governing body for the health system. And when they go and inspect, there is no one for them to go up to challenge an inspection, for example. There is nobody. So if you were to challenge Super League, who do they go to? Really? No. Who does? The fans just need an answer. We need transparency. So we would have accepted if the report and the process, a genuine process, was followed, and the facts were there, and it generally did say there was no viability, whatever the word is, for Toronto or rugby. I would have accepted it. But fans who pay into the sport through many different ways, they deserve transparency. That's the least they can do. They're not idiots. They are not idiots. And I sometimes feel that the decisions that they've made in the last 2-3 weeks, it's like, you know what? Our fans are idiots. They're not going to notice.
I also think that Super League owed it to all of the Wolfpack fans to have a plan. If they were going to say no, you can't come into Super League, they should have said why openly. And then they should have said, but here's what we've got for you. And if they had said, look, we would like the Wolfpack to go back to the championship in 2020. We want them to, even if they said we want them to stay in the championship for 3 years from that point on, and then we will relook at them coming back into Super League once the pandemic is hopefully settled down and the world gets back to a little bit of normalcy and our finances get back to normalcy. There was nothing there. It was just like, no, go away. And that was it. And that wasn't good enough. That's not good enough for all of the investment that they called upon from these teams that did look to start up expansion clubs. And I just think that Super League owes more than that, as you say, to the fans, but they also owe it to the people that were investing in these teams. And it's not just about the ones now. It's about anyone in the future that wants to invest in rugby league. They've got to know that, like, if something goes wrong, that rugby league doesn't just throw its hands up and say, well, we're going back to little towns in northern England and you're on your own, you know?
So there was a comment about sponsorship. I can't remember, Jenny will probably tell you. There's something about sponsorship or the value of sponsorship. And I said to Jenny, can you please tell me that I've just not read what I've read? Because are you telling me that you think a big city like Toronto cannot get some decent sponsorship? What kind of sponsors do the UK league get? I'm just wondering, how would you rate the sponsors that they are attracting?
Yeah, well, look, I tell you what, I know that the free pizzas you'd get out of Toronto would be better than the ones I've seen out of northern England. Jeez. Bloody tuna and corn.
Pizza. We should have pizza get involved, Jenny. 1970,
well, here's the thing. You know, I'm just going to list off a few of our commercial sponsors here. We had Air Transat. We had All Seas Global. We had Toronto, the jewelry company. The Toronto Wolfpack had their own, creams and things like that out that they sponsored. We had Yoda Labs. We had, there was countless sponsors, and they do list them. But then they compare it to they're comparing sponsorship with the fact that, a team in Australia has Hawaii mobile phones as a sponsor. And they're like, well, look what kind of sponsor they got. And I'm like, look kind of sponsor Super League got. They have to have free pizza.
Yeah,
they don't even get money from it. It's free pizza, and that's your sponsor. But you want us to pull in Hawaii as a sponsor, and that's pretty much what they were comparing it to.
And this is the point: is that you have an individual who is paid to lift up the sport. That is what a chief executive of any organization, commercial or sports, their role is to lift it up, to bring it to another level. And to make sure that the reputation of the business, of the sport, is intact. Yeah. And it's done fairly. NHL, whatever it is. You actually think that people were going to look at the pizza deal as a success? Like, really, in this day and age, that's the kind of deal you get if you're a local club. My local kids club get free snacks and stuff because it's free publicity.
Mm-hmm.
That's the kind of, at their level, they should be demanding money out of it, not, I'll give you free pizzas. Yes, it might have saved the club £5,000 a month or something on food. I don't know. I'm just throwing out numbers. But really? Really? For the sport?
Yeah, and
voted on that. Who regulated that?
It's like not even the worst deal Super League's ever signed. It's
right.
I don't know. I'm too new to know what the history of all the deals were. But yeah, it just, I can't understand. Oh my God.
How about having a CEO that looks at Toronto just as a city and says, you know what, I can't see anything commercially there for us. Like that's your job. If you can't do it, you shouldn't be in this role. It's a city of 6.1 million people. You know, it's if you can't find opportunity there, especially for a sporting club that people have already got behind there and that the media got behind and that is far from being saturated. I mean, that was the most ridiculous thing I think I read. You know, then you're the wrong person to be the CEO of Super League.
Like I said, who is minding the person at the top? Who is looking after him? Who is ensuring that, you know, corruption doesn't corrupt? I mean, he answers to nobody. I mean, he signs this Papa John's deal. Was that put past anybody? Was that voted on by the clubs? I can't see many clubs thinking, oh, well, that sounds pretty good. We get 3 large pizzas. Because if this is the case for the 12th team, Super League, I'm telling you right now, my 11-year-old son's team, they have a sponsor of a major wood company here in Scotland, wood manufacturer. I promised to order 4 pizzas. I mean, I'm pretty sure now my son's team's in the running for the 12th team because I'm giving more. And actually, they have 450 followers on social media. So, I mean, call me. We'll do a deal. Do you know what? That's how ridiculous we're getting now when looking for this sweet team.
I get nowhere. I'm a donut girl. So, you see, this is where me and Jenni don't work. It's like, donuts. Give me donuts and I'm sold, you know. No, it's hard. I'm laughing now because I have to, because Toronto Wolfpack to a lot of, I guess, the older people, the long-standing fans would probably see Toronto as they're a new club. You know, they're a club that is on paper, just like, companies will have employees, but they see the employees as just numbers on a spreadsheet. Mm-hmm. But the Toronto Wolfpack were a lot more than that. People don't realize. So since the announcement, I've been talking to fans on private who've been in tears because the Wolfpack was their only family. There's a lot of lonely people in the world, especially when they can't see their family and, they, for whatever reason, and they're like, I feel like it's been torn apart. It's been taken away from me. People like me and Jen, the Wolfpack, this is where I get really upset. It's hard living abroad sometimes. Mm-hmm. And the Wolfpack brought people together. I met Jenni and Ian and so many amazing expats from around the UK who have one thing in common. We're Canadian. And this team helped us come together. Yeah. And we would go to the game, have a good time. Our kids were there. It was like our own family that we were growing. And the way the whole thing was treated, it was like, who cares? I don't care. Like Toronto are just the number on a spreadsheet. I don't care. Just because we are new doesn't mean we don't have things weren't happening. And you can see from our pictures, we were having fun. We were bringing new people along. We're talking about it with our kid. My son talks about the Wolfpack all the time with his friend. He proudly wears it to his games.
The thing is, we're not asking for special treatment. What we're asking for is to be treated fairly. And I think that's where we need to use fairly. I would like then, do the clubs now that have pulled out due to COVID reasons, because that is the reason we gave at the beginning of the season, we were pulling out due to COVID. And it's very important to reiterate that we were pulling out due to COVID. Now, these other teams, yes, they have COVID, but they are pulling out due to COVID. So I'm asking, are they going to have to provide a 3-year financial plan? Are they going to have to undergo a review with their peers and a vote? Of course not. So if it's good for the goose, it needs to be good for the gander. And unfortunately, right now, all I'm seeing is a lot of xenophobes. And I'll call it. I'm seeing xenophobes. They don't like it because it's different. It's a different country. What has Canada got to offer? They don't even have Canadians in their team. And that's all you read about. Oh, well, Argyle had bills to do beforehand. And I'm sure if you go into any Super League club, there are unpaid bills. Of course there is. You know, every club manages their finances differently. And were there cracks? There were cracks. But if you were a team who had a 5-year vision and reached your vision in year 3, were we wrong to say no to central funding? Yes. Were we wrong to say we'll give up everything just to join the Super League? Yes. But I used the comparison before. It's like a teenage boy when you tell him he can see boobs for the first time. He is going to do whatever he can to get to that finish line. And that's what we did. We did whatever we could to get to that finish line, and we agreed. We signed Satan's order because
the thing is, a lot of people don't know, because the one comment I keep on hearing is the TV deal. You brought nothing to the TV deal. Well, many people choose to ignore that Sky had sold the rights already. So I'm sorry, but I think it's illegal to sell something that actually doesn't belong to you. Am I correct, Jenny? That is it illegal? That
I mean, they had the right, so yeah, they could sell the rights if they wanted to. Should a consultation have happened? Abso-freaking-lutely. And this is what seems to the fans jump on lines of information. And I mark my words now. I am almost positive that there's enough irate people out there that from both sides of the table that transparency will come through. Come to the table, and you are going to see leaks of reports. You are going to see people coming out and saying enough's enough. I'm here to speak, and actually set the record straight, because right now there is no record straight. And if any Super League club or Robert himself would like to set the record straight, here's my phone number, here's my email address. Let's put it out there. Let's put out the story. What are you so afraid of? And that's what I see. I see fear. I see fear from the Super League. I see fear from the owners. I see fear. I see right now they look like a bunch of scared kids running away from a solution. Yeah, that's what I see. You're afraid of change.
And that's the point. Me and Jenny just want, because like I said, we've got kids who are going to be brought up in this country, and, they fell in love with it because of the Wolfpack. But the thing is, they love rugby league. And I genuinely fear that when they're old, there might not be something there. Yeah. It might not happen next year or the year after, but the way it's going, I really don't know what will be left in 5-10 years time. And that's why we did the petition. It's not about Toronto. It's about, we need to understand what is going on. Fans deserve a right. You pay your season ticket. You pay merchandise. You pay for a lot of things. And though that paying, you are the lifeline. The club owners are your representatives. That's how it should be. Because guess what? They can own clubs, but if there's no fans, there is no club.
And the thing I would add to that is that you don't build something by tearing down what you've got in front of you. And I think that the Bradford Bulls are a really good example of that.
Yes.
Bradford Bulls were once the biggest club in Super League by quite some way. And I remember at the time telling English fans, like, the finances for all of the clubs are not great. And they won't take much for even the best clubs to fall over. And it was like, too big to fail, too big to fail. The game has got nothing positive from a team like the Bradford Bulls falling apart and disappearing. All we did was we lost another city, one of the few cities we had there in Super League, lost a city and lost a team, lost an entity, lost all of those fans. There are kids that are growing up in Bradford now. They can't say to themselves, well, I'm going to play for the Bradford Bulls in Super League. It was just lost instead of being saved, instead of somebody stepping in and saying, like, we can't lose something so important to the game. And that's what you see in the Toronto Wolfpack. You see a team that is very important. I don't want to hear about the Canadian players. The Melbourne Storm have only had a couple of Melbourne players in their team ever. They were half owned by News Limited, which was the NRL itself, for most of their history, for a very, very long time. And look at what the Melbourne Storm has become. The NRL stuck with the Storm because they knew it was a brand new media market. They needed it. It was too big to ignore. And that's what you have in the Wolfpack. You've got the opportunity to be into a new media market, a massive city. 6.1 million people. You can't turn your back on that when they've already embraced you. It's not like there's something that needs to be built here. It's something that already exists. And Super League cannot afford to turn its back on something and let another opportunity go by the wayside. And so I really applaud your passion. I just love that you're keeping the fires stoked, because Super League needs the Toronto Wolfpack. Where can we sign the petition? And I'll put it in the description of this episode, but whereabouts can we go to sign the petition?
It is a change.org petition that we started up, and we do want to stress that this isn't just about the Wolfpack. This is about Super League as a whole, because we strongly feel that everyone deserves answers. I will give you the link for it, but if you go to the change.org site, we called it "Make Rugby League Great Again," because that's essentially what we need to do. I think, in my honest opinion, do we need the Super League? I'm not sure about that. I'm not sure if we need to disband fully and come up with a mega league. I'm not sure how we would work it, but I do believe the man at the top has questions to be answered. And until we get those questions, or until he takes a long, hard look in the mirror and answers the question himself, have I done good for this league? Mm-hmm. Have I truly done good for this league? And if the answer isn't 100% yes, then you owe the people to step down.
Yeah. And I will put that on leaguefreak.com. I'll make just a post just for the petition itself, so you'll be able to find it there as well. I'll put it in the description of this podcast as well.
And like Jenni said, I know obviously you're based in Australia and so on, but if there is something going on, if this league is lost somehow, the connection between both countries in terms of the relationships of the games, when you have that big game between the winner of Super League, and it's going to die. And that's such a great game. There's so much to be. And the thing is, somebody said to me, "Oh, but we've got games in France." I'm like, why should it be just France? Like, why should we just look at it's either France or Canada? Why can't we have both? Why? I don't understand. It's like you have to pick between your children. Which child do you love the most? I love them both. Oh, you can't. You're not allowed to. It's exactly the same. Why should it have to be between France and Canada? I don't understand.
Fans should be asking themselves the most important question: why is all these reports and things like that just being done now?
Yeah. Yeah.
Why wasn't this asked at the beginning? Why wasn't this done at the beginning? One of the sentences in this report, and I love it. It's my favorite sentence. We had a very short time to prepare this report. You've had 3 freaking years. You knew we were going to get there eventually. Why did you not think about the viability until we said to you, the money is stopping? And I think that's what it comes down to. Our money has dried up. We need help. And he asked for $200K loan and was denied. So again, where's this COVID money gone to? He asked for that to keep playing. That's all he needed was $200K to keep playing, to tie him over, to be able to sort out funds. And they said no. To me, this was a fix from the start, and this was their way of getting us out. That's what I believe.
Now, there's something that was interesting that was said there about, do we need Super League? Do you think that there is any possibility, and look, I know that this is really, really reaching for something. I understand how difficult it would be. But do you think that there's any possibility that the Wolfpack can live on in a different can they enter the French competition? Is there the possibility of entering the United States Rugby League competition? Is there a possibility of forming some sort of transatlantic competition, or even being just part of the championship? I mean, how do you both feel about where the Wolfpack goes from here if the door is shut on Super League? And I agree. I don't know that Super League is the be-all and end-all. I think that there's definitely a possibility of something pretty damn good being built without Super League.
Right. I'll ask you a question, right? Mm-hmm. You can buy Toronto or any team. Would you really invest in any team where you know you will not be allowed to go up even if you win? Would you really?
And the answer is not.
I mean, well, we win the championship. As an example, before anyone shoots me, it's just an example. If you were one of the championship clubs who keeps winning the £1 million game, keeps winning the £1 million game, and you go nowhere, would you really invest that? Honestly, if that was your money, would you do that?
Yeah, and you can't. You just couldn't.
What's the point of playing?
Yeah. And look, I've heard people that follow championship clubs for years as well, because I don't think that promotion and relegation works for rugby league in the UK. I've got no problems with a team, if it's good enough, joining Super League. I've got no problems with that, and I think that should be the process. I think that the automatic promotion and relegation is a really damaging system. But when I've said that it shouldn't be automatic promotion and relegation, that sometimes you do need a couple of years being a really good club in the championship before you can build yourself to the point where you are capable of being in Super League. And I've heard fans from the championship saying, well, why would we do that? And it's not even worth it. And I wouldn't even watch them play and all this sort of stuff. I think that obviously Super League needs to be the goal for all of these teams. But it's, how long can you fund building up to that level? And the thing that kills me is that Toronto had done it. They'd done it so quickly. It was like a miracle. And they had the fan base. They had the big city behind them. They had a new market. There was every single box was ticked. And, it makes you wonder what would have happened if COVID didn't roll around. Would we be seeing Toronto just being fine? And if that's the case, then you can't kick them out. If it was COVID that was the nail in the coffin for the Toronto Wolfpack, then surely all of those positives they would bring to Super League and were about to bring to Super League, you've got to give them a chance to keep bringing them to Super League, even if you say start again in 2022.
But when Catalan joined, when they were given a place automatic in Super League, they were, and everyone say, well, Catalan were an established team and blah, blah, that's fine. But the fact is, they allowed them to stay in Super League for 3 years without worrying that they would go down. Mm-hmm. And I'm sorry, but because of the city that Toronto is and the fan base, which is very different to a French, I find, France, great country, been there many times. They love their union. They do love league as well. But culturally, France is very different to North American, to US and Canada. Mm-hmm. It's just very different. It is a sports nut continent. Mm-hmm. So it's very difficult to say, because Catalan were an established club, Toronto, they were new. I'm like, yeah, but culturally, we are very different. And we did a lot in 3 years. Yeah. So I think it was exceptions to one, but like Jenni said, where are the consistent rules? Where are the consistency in how you manage stuff? There is nothing. There's no rules of operations anywhere.
Honestly, the way I'd like to see it, and to answer your question, I don't want Toronto back in it. We're better than this now. We need to go out with our heads held up high, and we need to now start making change, which I think is what we're going towards. I genuinely feel that the RFL should take it all over, and let's make proper divisions and tables. Let's start making a constitution. Let's start making rules. Let's start making, let's think of the what if scenarios and have outcomes for it. Let's look at Widnes Vikings. They went into administration, I believe 2019. They're still playing. They're still playing because a bunch of fans raised money for them. Now, we didn't have fans raise money. We actually had somebody who is financially viable come forward and say, here you go, like this, I'll take care of the money. But yet that was okay for the Vikings to keep playing, even though, the surrounding of the funds and why they went into administration is a little bit, here and there. But you're looking at, so they found the viability in a town with a population of 61,000, but then they don't find the viability in a town with a population of 6 million. Yeah. I mean, I don't understand. So where do I want to see the Wolfpack or some form of the Wolfpack? We have Rugby World Cup coming. Our ladies are coming to that. We have, different tournaments, East versus West, things like that in Canada. Would I like to see a Canadian league? I would. I would like to see something happen in Canada or to join up with America and things. But we belong in some capacity within the RFL. We belong. We've earned the rights. We're giving jobs to rugby players who may not have been signed because, let's face it, everyone has a salary cap. And the players that we signed, your Ashton Sims, your Gaz O'Brien, your Lilitels, things like that, where would they have gone and played? Where would they have gone and played had it not been for us? So I think going forward, we need change and we need transparency, and we either need the Super League being babysat by the RFL, so it's actually run fairly, and then maybe we need a revote, we need a reconsideration, maybe. But I think, never say never is what I say. Never say never. Yeah. But at the same time, I think we need to look at the viability of the sport in its whole, because we've had a lot of clubs drop out recently in the Super League. So we need to look at the viability of the sport, because this is our new normal. The virus isn't going anywhere right now. We need to think, how can we make rugby league stick around for the next 100 years? And going the way we're going under the leadership we are going, it isn't going to stay. So again, but if Robert can look himself in the mirror and say that he's done the best he can do for this sport, then fair enough. But I don't think he can.
I just want to take this opportunity to say two things. One, thank you to everybody, all the fans from all the clubs who have reached out to me, Jenni, and so many Wolfpack fans, either publicly or private message, to really show their support. It really has actually shocked me. Actually, at the end of the day, you either are a rugby league fan or a club fan, and there's a lot of rugby league fans. So I want to say thank you to all of them. It's kind of actually made me cry sometimes of the things they've said, and especially the ones who've actually been there, and me and Jenni were going through some of them. Honestly, Jenni's like, Sandy, get it together. Like, I can't. It was just because people were speaking from the heart. Yeah. The messages of support were from the heart, and it wasn't like the other one is, thank you to the clubs who fought for us. Thank you for those people who believed in us, because it means a lot. When it's, people like Leeds and so on, you continuously fighted our cause. And I will always, and Wolfpack fans will always be appreciative of clubs like that, aren't we, Jenni? It's been really.
It is, yeah. And I think it speaks wonders too. Warrington abstained from voting. I think questions need to be asked too. Why did they abstain? Were they in fear of something? They're a pretty big financially sound club. I love Warrington. I've been, there in the hospitality suites. I was given, I'm very, good acquaintances with the owner of Warrington. And I will say, I hear you. Your non-vote says a lot for me. You're smart businessman in charge of Warrington. And I think the abstaining from voting says a lot to me. Those who voted no, I hope you weren't voting with your checkbooks, and I hope you were voting based on facts and not just somebody saying facts. I'm afraid I don't think they were. I don't think enough questions were asked. And I would love to see the minutes from this meeting published, so all of Rugby League and all of Super League supporters can draw their own conclusions and see the actual plan that was put forth rather than making assumptions. And thanks to the media too, who covered it fairly. Who
definitely
weren't just out for blood and out for drama. To those that gave that non-biased opinion, it was appreciated. And never say never is what I'm going to say to that. Never say never. We might not be back as the Wolfpack. We might not be back in Super League, but we've come too far as a country in a sport that isn't one of our national sports, and we are mainly union. We've come a long way. We've got our ladies going to Rugby World Cup, who I think are going to dominate. Never say never. And I hope for the likes of, Brian McDermott and thanks to him as well, because he really led that pack forward. And
everybody, Bob Hunter, these people really fought for us, and the judgments that were being made unfairly just because of, I just can say it on Twitter. So Bob, Carlo, everybody who worked 24/7 to really fight for us to have a team, thank you. And but yeah, I'm exhausted now. So.
No, exactly. And to the players as well who stood by the team, I think we should take a moment and appreciate them. Gareth O'Brien, thank you for not signing a new deal until you heard about Toronto. Maybe shame on that club for offering a deal before the decision of Toronto was made. But there were so many players that were waiting on this decision and wanting to play for the club. And that says a lot too, because let's be fair, if you weren't happy with the management, if you weren't happy with the club, you would have left. And many of these players stood by us and really cared about the fans. So, thank you to all of them as well. And I can only apologize to them because we really tried. We tried our hardest to get our voices heard. But now is a time where I think we can get our voices heard with a petition. Let's prove to Super League that we're not happy with the way it's being run. We're not happy with a 12th team being chosen with no criteria when there are teams that should deserve it but might not get in because their face doesn't fit.
I agree 100%. And look, that petition will be part of the description for this podcast. Make sure you go and sign up to it. It's very important. It's important for all of Rugby League, not just the Toronto Wolfpack. This is a decision on the future of our game and where we want it to be, how big we want it to be, not how small we want it to remain. So I just want as many people as possible to get onto that petition. It'll be in the description. I'll put it up on leaguefreak.com. I won't post anything for the next, few days. It'll be the top post on there, so you can check that out. This has been a really important podcast. Please retweet it and share it, put it on Facebook, put it everywhere, because I think it's, this is a side of the Toronto Wolfpack story that we're not hearing too much about. And I think it needs to be heard. I think the passion needs to be heard. I think that, the importance of this club, and it's not just about business, it's about people, and it's about bringing people together. It's about bringing new people into the sport. And it's about all of our love for this game that we're trying to make bigger and better. And that's something that the Toronto Wolfpack stood for. And I don't want that to end. I don't think any of us want that to end.
Stop it. You're making me cry.
I'm sorry. If you start crying, I'll start crying. So look,
this goes out to our 3 followers on Twitter as well, because we don't have a very big social media impact. But if you can, any cardboard fans out there who want to like our social media pages, that would be great. We need all the help we can clearly get.
Yeah, I agree.
That was facts.
Thank you. Thanks for having us again.
Thank you for having us. Yes.
Look, thank you.
Go Panthers.
Yeah. Panthers. We lost 2 games this year.
Man.
look, thank you for coming on. You're welcome on any time. If anyone listening, make sure you subscribe. Go to manscaped.com, put in the code NRL, 20% off and free shipping at everything at manscaped.com. They're in Canada, they're in the UK, they're in Australia, they'll wherever you are, just go and check it out. Also, follow us on Twitter. I'm banned from Twitter at the moment, so I can't tweet. I got another week to go. I said the special word
it's a long
twice.
Story.
Yeah, I said the special word twice, and they didn't like it. But anyway,
COVID too many times.
I did. I said COVID twice, and they didn't like it. Anyway, thank you both for coming on. It's been an awesome podcast.
We'll be in touch.
You.
Thank you. Thanks for having us. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.